Hello and welcome back to the Megan Daubert podcast. My name is Megan and I am your host of this podcast, and I am so thankful that you decided to join me back here today. I am taking us through the story of my husband, Michael, from his cardiac arrest event, which led to living with an anoxic brain injury. And I have been sharing the last year of our life, of what that has looked like medically and emotionally and physically and spiritually. And we are going to dive into the 1 year mark of this story today. But I just wanted to pause. I think there are a lot of new people here in this community. And if you are signing on for the first time today, thank you so much for pressing play. I am really excited that you are checking out what this story is all about. And I would definitely encourage you to go back to the beginning, just so you have a frame of reference for what I'm talking about. I have a trailer episode in the beginning that gives you kind of the overview of what this podcast is about. And then I take you from night one, where Mike's accident happened, all the way through our hospital stay and rehabilitation, and then coming back home. And there's just a lot of things that I hope you will find helpful or encouraging in the beginning. But today we are wrapping up the first year of Mike's recovery and our life at home now, living with a brain injury. So you are coming in to, very much a middle of the story kind of situation, but welcome. Feel free to stay or pause and go back to the beginning. Either way, I'm going to catch you guys up on February 4th and 5th of 2025. So that is where today this episode finds us. So leading up to February 5th of 2025. So 2024 is his accident. 2025 is where this part of the story takes place. People are asking, how are you going to commemorate or celebrate or honor? It's weird. This is not a birthday, right? The 1 year anniversary. And do you call it an anniversary? I'd been calling it the 1 year mark because nothing in me wanted to call it a celebration. Anniversary seems to have such a happy connotation. What do you call it when you commemorate the passing of a loved one, right? What is that marker in the calendar name? Because it almost felt like that for me. Again, Michael is here, but there is a marked before and after of our old life and our new life. So in a way, it still feels like, a mourning for me and our kids. But Michael, on the other hand, he was enjoying celebrations and was really into party planning still. So he, of course, as this date is approaching, whenever we talk about it in groups and remind him, hey, we're getting to the 1 year mark of when your accident happened, his first response is, we should have a party. Or it's like my first birthday, which is really sweet and makes total sense that he would say that. But especially with our daughter, Carmen, she did not like hearing that. She did not want dad to say that this was his birthday. She thought that was, well, I'm not actually sure exactly what she thought it was, but I can kind of guess at what her feelings towards this were. And we will talk about that in the future. But she did not like, and I kind of didn't like, calling this a celebration. I know you can look at it from the perspective of this is a celebration of a second chance life. And yes, I'm with you on that. But for us in our healing journey, just 12 months in and not having much resolve was not exactly a celebration for us. So I kind of was approaching it with, I don't really know what to expect. I'm not really sure how I'm going to feel. Michael, he's not experiencing any emotions still, no swings, no ups and downs, no highs and lows. So he's kind of fine. So really it's how am I feeling about this? And I didn't know, other than I didn't feel like I wanted to plan a party that I was okay with. I gave myself permission to not throw a party. So February 5th was going to be a Wednesday of this year. So we knew that Tuesday, February 4th, there was going to be a healing prayer service in one of our local churches. I think the maybe it's the first Tuesday of every month, they do this healing prayer service. And it's this beautiful ministry. There are men and women that pray specifically for the gift of healing in people's lives, healing of all sorts. And there are some incredible testimonies that have come out of these nights, this ministry, prayer time with these pastors. And I believe it and love it. And I've never, well, I was going to say never experienced that myself, but I mean, Michael is a walking testimony of healing to some degree, right? However, thinking of going to a healing prayer service, you often think of like people being immediately delivered from whatever disease, sickness, ailment, disability they have, right? So that kind of terrifies me, because when you pray for healing, for me at least anyway, I almost feel like I'm guarded, because I don't want to be set up for disappointment if the healing doesn't come here and now. So I'm kind of like protecting myself. Like, okay, we'll pray for healing, but we know that this might take a long time, right? Well, so I'm just being honest with where my thoughts land. I want healing, and I believe the Lord can still do miracles and still does do miracles these days, but I also don't want any more disappointment. So I'm kind of like one foot in, one foot out, right? But our community group that meets on Tuesdays said, let's go. We're all in. Let's go pray over Michael at this healing prayer service. And I had several of my best friends in town join us, and my mom and my sister, they all joined us for the healing prayer service on Tuesday night, February 4th, the eve of Michael's 1-year mark. And the service was beautiful. It was a time of worship and prayer and laying hands on Michael. And the whole congregation had a moment of prayer for Michael. They called him up to the front, and we joined him, and just everyone surrounded him and laid hands on him. And we prayed for the restoration of his brain and his memory, that things would come flooding back, that new neural pathways would be formed, and just, a complete healing, which is what we've been praying for from day one. People in the hospital, in the ICU, prayed those prayers over Michael every day and have been praying over him every day since then. So this was only significant in that we all went out of our way on this Tuesday night to go to a healing prayer ministry where we believe the Lord can do it. And we're here saying, yes, if it is your will, do it. Like, we'd love to see it happen, but it didn't, right? He wasn't miraculously healed that night either, just like he wasn't healed the last 364 days since his initial accident. And healing is taking place in his body, but at a much different, seemingly less miraculous pace, right? So there's this tension. Like, I recognize that the fact that he's even here, that is still a miracle. Like, we've seen a miracle in Michael's life, but the pain and the lack of complete healing that we've lived with for the last year still needs healing. So there's still a lot to pray for. So anyhow, this healing prayer service marking the eve of his 1-year anniversary, it was beautiful. I still fully believe in the power of prayer and that the Lord can heal, but that wasn't Michael's story for that night either. So we go home, and the next day is February 5th, Wednesday. And it was a full day. So I didn't do anything out of the norm. Well, that's false. A lot of this was out of the norm. So I didn't plan anything celebratory, except we started our morning. I took Michael to the coffee shop, Roast Riders in town, which is the same coffee shop that I started my morning of February 5th, 2024 at, with my two friends, Jen and Brooke, as we were planning a teacher appreciation week for our school. And I had an encounter with Mike's best friend, Jay, and it was such a good morning. And then our world came crashing down. Well, I wanted to reclaim that morning. So I took Michael and we went to Roast Rider, and we ordered ourselves hot coffees to go. And it was another one of those situations where Michael's like standing there in front of the coffee shop. He doesn't really remember the coffee shop, and doesn't really know what to order. It's overwhelming to order off of a menu. So I usually help him. I'm like, hey, are you feeling a hot drink or a cold drink? Do you want it sweet? Do you want it plain? And he's able to then pick what he wants. And he usually lands on something like a mocha. And I think that is what he got that morning. I wanted to, maybe that was my way of celebrating, was to go treat ourselves to these yummy hot drinks at the place where my worst day in history started for me. So we did that. We took back a coffee morning at Roast Riders. And then I took Michael to a psychologist because we were in the process of needing to get some things situated through our contacts at Shepherd's. They were helping me walk through the disability process, and they needed a psychologist to evaluate Michael. And it just so happened that the psychology appointment was scheduled on February 5th. They had no idea that that was the 1-year mark of his accident, but we went to this place and met this doctor who we'd never met before, but I got to sit down with him in his office and Mike, and I was with them for the first hour. And it was kind of this interview. He was just information gathering before they began a giant exam with Michael. And this exam took about 4 hours. So the first hour I spent with them, and then 4 hours I had to sit in the waiting room and just wait. And it was very clear from their conversation, like Michael was a great conversationalist to this wonderful doctor. And he then started to give him some of the basic tests that people in this field give to memory issue people. And Michael, I know he gave him 3 words, and he said, I want you to remember those. I'm going to come back to him. And he asked Michael more orientation questions and then came back to those 3 words. And Michael could not for the life of him get him. Even with some prompting, even when you say, well, the first one, it was a piece of fruit. And Michael was just guessing like, oh, was that an orange? What was it? And he's like, no, it was apple. And so that, again, this is the level that Michael is at. He can converse and he looks great, but his darn memory is not working. The psychologist then begins the 4-hour exam, and I go out in the waiting room and I wait. And now I'm working on getting my real estate license. So I did bring my laptop to just do some of my coursework there. And it's 4 hours. So he brings me back into the office when it's done, and he wasn't able to give me directly the results. They had to go to the association we were sending them to. But he was like, I know you are anxious to hear some things about your husband. And he says, it's very clear that I am going to diagnose him with a neurocognitive disorder. He said he scored actually incredibly high on some of our intelligence portions, but incredibly low on working memory. And it's this weird juxtaposition. Like his knowledge, it's still there, but he cannot access it. And he cannot hold new memories in his working memory. And so his testing was very congruent with what I'd been seeing and with what other tests have shown. So he sent those results off, which I still don't have to this day, other than knowing that he was officially diagnosed with a neurocognitive disorder. And that was that. That was the morning of the 5th. And then I took Michael to the real estate class, the brokerage where I'm getting certified. We were doing some house training, and I've been bringing Michael along every day because it's like, okay, let's bring him here. He was welcome to come. He should have known these people, right? Because he'd worked there for 8 years prior. And we thought maybe reviewing this information will spark something in his brain. Well, I think this was day 6 of the course that I was in at this brokerage. Michael, nothing. He did not remember anything. He would sit there with me and try to absorb the information. Sometimes it was a PowerPoint, sometimes it was an in-person instructor, and he would try to take notes, but he would say, this all sounds familiar. He's like, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. I can't make any sense of it. And it's wild, right? Like we're just real estate basics, contract writing basics, words, vocabulary words that he should know. Like he lived in this world, but that being there, it didn't bring it back to him. So we finished that course. That's like the rest of the day. I think we finished around 3 o'clock, and then it was time to drive back and pick up the kids from school and come home. And it was a normal evening. We had dinner together. And then Wednesday night meant I had worship band rehearsal at my church because I am a volunteer worship leader, and I was on the schedule for that coming weekend. And Wednesday nights were our rehearsal night. And so I was getting ready to leave, and I was going to go, and the kids were going to be fine. And Mike was at home, and we had gotten to a place where I could leave everybody at the house for that amount of time. And with the kids knowing that they need to get to bed, Michael would be fine reading a book or watching a TV show. And I started to panic. I did not want Michael out of my sight as that sun went down on February 5th. And last minute, I was like, you know what, Michael, get your shoes, grab your coat. You're coming with me. And I said, Carmen, you're in charge of the boys. Make sure everybody goes to sleep by 9. And Michael, you're coming with me. For whatever reason, I did not want to let Michael out of my sight. I was not feeling that way during the day, probably because he was in my sight, in my care, but I didn't have this panic until the sun went down. So I brought Michael with me for the rehearsal, which ended up being like a 3-hour process door to door. Michael just kind of sat there and hung out. And of course, it's a familiar, comfortable environment. So he was okay. But I didn't really vocalize this to anybody, but I wanted my eyes on Michael at all times that night. There have been many other nights during this year where I didn't feel that way, but for whatever reason, this particular night, I didn't want him out of my sight. I wanted to make sure he was okay. I guess I was scared. I guess the memory of February 5th was subconsciously lurking in my mind as the evening came and I was leaving and Michael was staying home. I guess I was scared of being separated. We get home after band practice and I am wiped out. No, of course, the kids were not asleep. So they wanted me to say prayers. They wanted to come in and tuck them in. And I basically crawled to the bedroom, somehow got on my bed and like couldn't move. I remember laying my head down on my pillow, clothes on top of my covers, and the kids were coming into my room. I could not even lift my head off of the pillow. It felt like a ton of bricks was on me. And what I remember it feeling like was how my body felt the night of Michael's accident and the subsequent nights after, where I was just in this fog, in this like protective brain space of numbing out or battling anxiety, but I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My vision began to blur this night, February 5th of this year. And I remember telling the kids, I'm so sorry. I can't get up. I'm going to have to say your prayers in my room, to which I could barely even speak, but I couldn't move. And I didn't make a connection to how my body felt a year ago until the next day. But my dreams were so full of crazy dreams. My sleep was restless. I had a terrible night's sleep that night. Michael's day was fine. Michael's night was just like any other. But so I remember my body giving out on me the night of February 5th. And I luckily had counseling scheduled that next day, February 6th, and was able to talk to my counselor about what I experienced because she knew that this was the date marker. And we immediately dove into it. And the look on her face, she was like, yeah, Megan, the body remembers. She said, you were fine. Like, I had a good normal day. I was not breaking down in tears. I was not crying at the memory. Like, we were okay. But then at night, when all is said and done, like, it's like my body remembered everything. You know that book, The Body Keeps the Score? I think I've talked about it before. It's not lying. The body remembers. And whatever stress and tension I was carrying in my shoulders and my neck, We know we carry trauma in our hips, our hip joints, and all the other places in my body that I've been storing these emotions, panic, anxiety, stress, trauma, tension. They know. And no amount of mind game can cover up what the body actually keeps. And I had just hit that wall. And though I was telling myself, I'm okay, I'm in a good place, Michael is right here, my body was like, woohoo, we remember this, and you are not okay. So we worked through that in counseling. We did some EMDR, and also what we were able to just uncover of why that was my response is because I was still so sad at how much of Michael I had lost. And again, yes, he is here. Yes, he slept next to me that night, but he's a different person. And our life before is no more. And I don't know if I'm going to get him back. And all this stuff has changed. Like, I'm just sad. My sadness, my grief is what I regularly try to suppress, because if I fully acknowledge it, it's too much. I can't lift my head off the pillow. So most of my days I go around just like stuffing that sadness down. We were able to begin working on what are ways that I can not stuff that sadness down. What are little moments that I need to take to grieve? How can I help my body, mind, and soul process this sadness going forward? Because it's not a good idea to store that in my body without attending to it. But anyhow, it's just fascinating to me how grief and trauma works, and how I thought I was so put together, but I really wasn't. And though I was telling myself a different story than my body, it became obvious. And I mean, the Lord designed our bodies in an incredible way. And part of that makes me wonder too, like some of the big questions I have with Michael are, okay, he physically experienced all of this trauma and all of the memory loss, all the cognitive issues are doing something in his body. Where is all that going? Like, if that's my experience after a year, what about the person who it actually happened to? I have not seen him experience any trauma or experience any working through any of this. I'm like, where is that being stored? And when is he going to deal with it? That terrifies me. And that I don't have it hasn't happened yet. I can't tell you about it other than these are my questions. Like, at what point does this begin to come up? Will it ever come up? Or because he has no memory of his event and being in the hospital and all the changes, he has no memory to compare the before and after. Like, will he ever go through this process of needing to process it? Surely stuff is being stored in his body. Like, where does this all go? These are such big questions that I don't have the answers to, but I do want to dig into in the coming seasons of this podcast. I want to bring in some professionals to help talk about this and speculate and teach me, help you. So that's kind of my plan for some of the direction of where this is going. But for now, yeah, that was the 1 year marker. It was significant and not significant, insignificant, significant. It was a big day filled with little moments, big moments, normal moments, weird moments. But yeah, I still have a ton of big questions, but I wanted to read this to you. Another book that I love, The Familiar Stranger by Tyler Staton. He has this section of this book on healing. And I wanted to go back to this whole idea of how we pray for healing. And we all know some people get healed and others don't. What does that mean? And ultimately, I don't know. Ultimately, we don't have answers, right? This is kind of what he shares in part of this book. It's in the section under healing. He just posed the question, why do some healings happen and not others? And he says, I don't know. That's the only honest response. What I definitely do know is that if you prayed for a person only to watch them suffer, it's not because you didn't have the right words, the right faith, or the right technique. Healing isn't a magic trick, awaiting a magician who knows the spell. It's one of the ways God shows us his love. Priest and spiritual director Albert Haas simply writes, healing is not an achievement. Healing is a gift. And I think that's my encouragement to us, to think about healing as a gift. Healing here on this side of eternity is a taste of what's to come with Jesus' return. Healing here on this earth is a gift. It's a little bit of healing. But I think what's so interesting in this book, he talks about, hey, those people who are healed this side of eternity, like they could wake up the next morning, they're going to have a headache. They're going to wake up one day and they're going to get sick with the flu or a virus. And eventually they're going to die a real death here on earth. So the healing, is temporary, but it is a sign of what's to come. And what's to come is that life where all is made right. Everything is new. There is no more pain and no more suffering, and healing eternal is for everyone. Like it's this waiting that we're in. And that is kind of the tension that Michael and I are sitting in is, yeah, we would love healing on this side of eternity, but are we going to get it? We don't know. It's not because we don't have enough faith. There's no recipe for it, right? It's not a magic trick. It's just a sign of God's love. And one of the ways he shows us his love. And I would sit here and argue, if you have listened to every episode of mine, you know that the Lord has shown me and Michael his love in so many ways. Maybe it hasn't been miraculous, instantaneous healing where all of Michael's memories and his old personality comes back. No, but God has shown us his love in so many incredible ways. And I can't neglect that. And how Tyler ends the book, he says, healing, it's not a recipe. Everyone who acquires a taste for the wondrous kingdom sign of miraculous healing. So it's a taste of the kingdom, right? But it's a sign of miraculous healing. Everyone who acquires a taste for it in this life also stomachs plenty of disappointment. We can pray for healing by keeping the sign in proper perspective with the substance and trusting that while Jesus has not revealed a God we can perfectly understand, he has revealed a God that we can perfectly trust. And that is where I land. I don't have all my questions answered. I don't know. I don't think we were meant to know everything. I think we just have to know that his ways are higher, but we do know that he is a God that we can perfectly trust. And I do trust God. I do trust God that if he doesn't heal Michael in year 2, he's going to take care of me, and he's still going to show us his love, and he is still going to be good, and he is still going to be sitting on the throne. So wherever you are, whatever camp you land in this idea of healing, like, would you just trust the Lord with me? He is still good, and he is perfectly worthy of our trust. Thank you for joining me today. Next week, next episode release, Michael will be with me on the podcast. So if you're listening to this in time, if you have any particular questions or things that you want to talk to him about, send me a message, send me an email, send me a direct message, and I will try to tackle that. But either way, it'll be a great episode together next time. I appreciate you all for joining me today. We will be together again on the podcast. Take care.